Okay, so in this exercise, this would be now the second video on financial maths. Alright, there was, out of the homework, out of exercise 11.1, was there any issues there? Exercise 11.1. You had to do all 7 sums, no? Any issues there, people? Okay. So now, that now brings us to calculations of interest rates. Okay? Yes? Number 7. Why are you people so late? Huh? Duties. What's more important, maths or your duties? Huh? Duties more important. I keep on believing that lies, okay? If you're going to get your 69% for maths, for which you need 70% for, and then how are you going to explain that in your application? Duties. You did your duties and you missed out on the maths period. Prioritize your maths over everything else. Okay, here we go. This is exercise 11.1. The only problem you had was number 7. Okay. We are told that Taupo sells his business for 430,000 Rand when he is 32 years old. He decides to save his money for his retirement. He deposits the money into a pension fund where the interest is 14% compounded annually. Calculate how much money he will have saved by the time he's 65. So from 32 to 65, how many years is that? Sorry? It's 33 years. Correct? Oh my word, I forgot this is that class. Please talk to me, people. You guys will go black. Okay. Now the calculators looked a bit weird. So, that is 65 minus 32. Yes, it is 33. So 33 years that money is in the account. Okay? Then we are told that, assuming that the money was invested for 30, they gave us that. Okay, normally when they give us this time span, they don't give us that. Alright? But okay, confirms we are correct. So, if he sells a business for 430,000, that's going to be your P value. Okay? What was his return? He deposits, calculate how much money. So in other words, he's calculating your A value. Not so? So your A is equal to P into 1 plus which formula? Compound formula. How do we know it's compound? Because the interest rate is 14% per annum compounded annually. So it's I to the exponent n. So your P value is 430,000 into 1 plus your interest rate is 14%, 0.14 to the exponent, 33. Okay. This calculator also doesn't want to play along. It's into 1 plus 0.14 to the exponent, 33. So that gives us an answer of 3 million. Where do you come from? What? The Wi-Fi. See, the Wi-Fi is more important than maths. How much I now feel? Everything is more important than maths to you people. But okay, that is... Right, so that brings us to... I think I made a mistake here, no? 32 million. Yo. 32,458,507,75. Is that the correct answer? Yes. So, where did you go wrong, Michael? But you understand now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, that brings us to the end of exercise 11.1. Okay. Now we're looking at calculation of interest rates. And this is today's lesson, calculation of interest rates. Which page is this on? 370. Okay. Example on page 370. You guys ready? Right. So the first question, example 1 says 50,000 Rand is invested for a period of 7 years. So from here what can be drawn already? From here what can we say? This is your P-value, your principal. It's invested for a period of 7 years. What is 7? N is 7. Okay? The total amount accumulated in the fund at the end of 7 years is 83,568 Rand. What does that tell us? That's your A value. You guys understand? First question. Calculate the interest rate. So I'm calculating the rate here, R value. Per annum, compounded annually. That will yield this return. So which formula do you use? Compound formula. What's the compound formula? A is equal to P into 1 plus I, the exponent n. So what's your A value? 83,568 equals 50,000 into 1 plus your I value, which is what we're calculating here, not so. Remember your I is your rate of 100. So it's I to the exponent. Alright. So what do I do for next? What do I do here thereafter? Divided by 50,000 both sides. So what happens is that cancels. So it's 1 plus I to the 7 equals. Put it in a calculator. Is 83,568 over 50,000. Gives you 1,67136. So I say 1,67 and the number of course carries on. Okay? So what do I do next? We take the what do we do next? Yes, well done. Yes. To get rid of the 7, we're going to take the 7th root. Okay. Do on one side, do on the other side as well. So that 7th root cancel that exponent 7, so it's 1 plus I equals. Put on the calculator the 7th root, so you press 7, shift, this button. The 7th root of the answer calculated is 1, 076 and the number of course carries on. Okay, remember I'm using the answer button on the calculator here. Okay, why do I use the answer button? Because if I press answer, it's the last answer calculated on the calculator, as you can see. Okay. And by using the answer button, it's the accurate answer for at that point, the accurate number. So what do I do thereafter? The 1 over. So it becomes negative 1. So if I minus 1 from here, what do we get? 0,0761, the number carries on. But that is your I value, not so. So what do I do thereafter? Okay, you got now I, remember I is 0,076 and the number carries on. But what do they want? They want the rate, the percentage. So I must multiply that by 100. So if I put that in a calculator, answer times 100 gives us 7,61%. Okay, is there any confusion? No? Okay. Let's look at the B question. B says, calculate the simple interest rate per annum that would provide this return. So what's the difference now? Simple interest formula. What's your simple interest formula? A is equal to P into 1 plus I times N. Do we know our A value and our P value and all of those values? Yes. So I'll give you a minute to do the substitution and try and solve for I in this case. Okay. Let me fit something in the form. Okay. So for question B, your A value of course is going to be 83,568 equals your P value is 50,000 into 1 plus I times 7. 7 years. So what I do first is I divide by 50,000 both sides. Or I could have multiplied 50,000 out there. Okay? The reason why we couldn't multiply out here was because of that exponent. Okay? According to BODMAS, that exponent need to be solved first. That is cancelled. Which of course gives you 1,67 and the number carries on. So it's 1 plus 7i. Okay? Let's go again. It's going to be 83,568 divided by 50,000. View 1,67 and the number carries on. Minus 1. Then I divide by 7. Not so. Which gives me an I value of 0,0959 and the number carries on. So what do I do now? You multiply. Do you need a percentage? So I multiply this by 100. By multiplying this by 100, I get it in percentage. Okay? I multiply that by 100. Gives you 9,59%. Okay. You could say 9,6 if it says to 1 decimal place. Do they specify? No, so you're allowed to go to 2 decimals or 1 decimal, doesn't it? Unless the question is specified, you must go to 1 decimal and then if you don't round it off to the specification made, of course you're going to lose the mark. But it wasn't specified, so yes, that is fine at this point. Okay, is there any confusion, people? Any confusion? No. So that brings us to exercise 11.2. So since there was no confusion with regards sorry, with that exercise, we're going to carry on to the next exercise. Okay. So now we're looking at compound interest over different time periods. So we are told that at this point, let me just copy this quickly. So what we've dealt with thus far is what you should have done in grade 10 finance, okay, financial maths. Okay. Now we're looking at interest over different time periods. Okay. So now in daily life, in reality, we don't have compound interest compounded yearly only. Okay. We have options of compounded monthly. That means to say, if you work out your interest for the month, that interest gets added to the principal, and that becomes a principal of the next month. As I explained to you already with regards to compound interest. No? It was compound interest compounded yearly for 3 years. You deposited money into the account, then they add your interest for 1 year to that value, and then together the interest plus that principal forms the principal of the next year. Okay? Then, of course, your principal is now a bit bigger than the previous year. Not so. So what happens is the principal of the second year then accumulates an interest over that second year again. Then that interest gets added to the principal of the beginning of the first year. Okay? Which then gives you a bigger principal at the end of the second year. So basically what happens is, so you got an amount that's going to be deposited for 3 years. There's T1, T2, the end of term 3, and year 2 and year 3. So if you got an amount of money here, what's going to happen? It's going to draw an interest for 1 year. Not so. So what happens is, that principal that started off here, plus this interest will now lie there. Not so. Which is now the principal of this, the second principal, or the principal of this part of the calculation, of the timeline. Not so. So of course this principal P2 is already greater than P1. Not so. Why? Because the interest was added to that P1. So what happens is P2 now carries gains an interest again over that time period. You guys understand? Which means to say P3, at P3 what do you note? P3 has to be greater than P2. Not so? And then it draws again an interest over that time period. Not so? Now say for argument's sake you had 10,000 Rand. Okay? And it was compounded, as you can see, compounded annually for 3 years. Okay? At 10% for argument's sake. So it's 10 over 100. You see what we get? We'll get 10,000, 1, 2, 3, into, why is it in stat mode? Let's put it in normal mode. So it's going to be 10,000 into 1 plus 0.1 to the exponent 3. So that will end off with 13,330 Rand. Okay, at the end of 3 years. Okay. So if you had calculated the simple interest here, then if you look at simple interest, it will be 10,000 into 1 plus, I think this was similar to the calculation we did yesterday. No, it's times 3. So if you do a simple interest on that, it gives you an answer of 13,000 Rand. So what is the difference? The 330 Rand difference. Same interest rate, same amount. No? Was deposited over the same time period. But what do you notice? Compound interest draws a better return. Can you see that? Why? Because the interest is worked out for 1 year, that interest then draws an interest, that interest draws an interest, and so on. Although it looks fairly small here, like 300 Rand to you guys are nothing. Not so. You go out with your friends, 300 Rand is too little. No? So, what happens is, what if this had to be for 30 years? You see, if you put the 30 there, then for 30 years, that will be, for 30 years, that was, what was it, 40,000? 40,000. Can you see that? Whereas, for 30 years, compound interest, what do you notice? That is 40,000, whilst the compound would draw in, will give you a return of 174,492 Rand and 2 cents. You see the difference? So the compound interest, because it's a year-on-year interest, gets added, and the interest gains an interest, draws an interest, and so on. Do you guys understand? That is why. Okay, Robin, not here. Okay, so you guys understand? No? So what happens is, what will happen if we say, okay, the interest is compounded monthly. So here we got T0, that's T, 1 over 12, T, 2 over 12, and so on, 12, 3, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, 12. So that is basically T1 again. Not so. So then we add T2, and then it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. So what you'll note here is that your principal will draw an interest for 1 month. If you say now compounded monthly. So the interest will, the principal will get the interest for 1 month. Not so. Which now becomes the principal of that time period. Then it draws an interest again for another month. Becomes now the principal at that point. And we draw an interest again. Becomes the principal at that point. So instead of over 3 years, 10,000 Rand would have compounded 3 times in that year. How many times will this compound in 3 years? 36. Correct? Because how many times is it compounding in 1 year? 12. And then 12. And then 12. So that will compounded monthly will take you 36 compounding in 1 year. In 3 years, sorry. You understand? However, the interest gets divided over that period. So if we tell you it's 10% per annum compounded annually. So that means to say it's going to be 10% over 12 months. Not so. So it's going to be 0,1. So how much should it be for one part here? It will be 10 over 0,1 over 12. And that's why how you're going to variate your I. So how many times is it going to be taken? 36 times. How do we get 36? 3 times 12. And your interest gets divided by 12. So your time period is going to be multiplied by 12, while your interest will be divided by 12. Make sense? Make sense, people? Yes. Right. So let's see what they tell us. Okay. We'll do now more of those calculations. Okay. So far in this chapter, the interest has been compounded annually. Annually means what? Per year. However, it is common practice to compound interest more frequently than once a year. Interest can be compounded over any period of time, but more common periods are as follows. Compounded annually is compounded for the year. Okay, interest is calculated and added to the end of each year. If it says semi-annually, what does semi mean? Two parts. No? Semi-annually is half yearly. So if you got the interest rate here, if you use the formula here, it's A is equal to P into 1 plus, what did we say with it? What's going to happen to the interest? I must divide it by 2. Not 12. When you did compounded monthly, I divided by 12. This is semi-annually. There's 2 parts in this year. So I divided by 2. And the time period I multiplied by 2. Can you see that? Because over 3 years, how many times will it compound over 3 years? How many times? So half yearly, it's going to happen every 6 months. So how many times is going to happen over 6 months? Over every 6 months, it will happen 6 times over 3 years. How do we get 6? 2 times 3. Make sense? Right. Then, we are told quarterly. How many quarters in 1 year? 4. So what will my formula be? A is equal to P into 1 plus I over 4, the exponent 4 in. You guys understand? Now it says compounded monthly. Oops. Compounded monthly. How many, so what's your variation here? So here we are told interest is calculated and added at the end of every month. So your formula A is equal to P into 1 plus I over 12 to the exponent 12 in. You see that? Then it says compounded daily. How many days are there in a year? 365. So what will the formula be here? A is equal to P into 1 plus I over 365. The 365. You guys agree with that? You will understand. Alright. So we are told here the compound interest formula needs to be adapted with the interest added more frequently than just once a year. If it was once a year, that's the formula given, A is equal to P into 1 plus I to exponent E. So we did a variation on all this here. For those of you doing finance next year, you get instantaneous compounding as well. No? It will happen at a much higher rate, or more often than what is given at high school. Okay. Right, so let's look at example 1. And example 1 is on page 372. Example 1 on page 372. We are told 10,000 Rand is deposited into a savings account for 5 years. So what is the 10,000 Rand? Which value is it? It's your P value. For 5 years. What is that? Calculate the total amount of money accumulated. So what are we calculating here? A. In each of the following cases. If the interest rate is 12% per annum. So what is that? Odd value. So in the first case, it's compounded annually. If it's compounded annually, what's the formula? A is equal to P. Okay, so you apply that formula quickly. Right, so what do we get? What's your P value? 10,000 into 1 plus what? 0,12 to the exponent? 5. That gave us what? 17,600 and? Comma? 42. You guys understand? Let's look at B. B, we are told, compounded quarterly. So how do we change the formula? This formula becomes A is equal to P into 1 plus I over 4. Y over 4? Quarters. 4 parts in a year. Okay? To the exponent? 4 times? 4 times the amount of, so it's 5. So they're going to compound 20 times over 5 years. You guys understand? So do the substitution in the calculation. It's actually in and not 5. Okay, so what do we get? 10,000 into 1 plus 0,12 over that gives us 18,000? 166, comma? 80,061, comma? 11. Let's guys see the formula for compound monthly. I over 12 to the 12 in. That gives us 10,000 into 1 plus 0,12 over 12 to the exponent 12 times 5. Which is what? 18,000? Sorry? Comma? 90. So what do you notice? You know, the return is just bigger and bigger at the same compounding, at the same interest rate, sorry. Okay? That was C. And D compounded daily, what's the formula? A is equal to P into plus I over 365 in 10,000 into 1 plus 0,12 over 365. You want 365 times 5. That gives us a return of? Sorry? 219, 39. Alright, you guys understand? Any confusion? Okay, it's fairly simple, no? So what's going to happen is, when you do your homework, it will stick in your head, no? But most of us are not that type. We're the rebels, no? We don't want to do the work and so on. And to see, I understand everything. That's how we think, not so? Have we changed our thinking? You're already considering your duties more important than maths, so I don't know. Right, example 2. And example 2 is on page 373. Page 373. Of course, your homework is exercise 11. On page 274, the odd numbers. So don't do the whole exercise, no? Just do the odd numbers for me. And then we'll sort out what issues you have with those 5 sums before we do the remaining of the sums. Sorry? This is 11.3, yes. The odd numbers you're going to do for me. Okay, we just need to wrap up. This before the bell rings quickly. Right, this is on page what? What do we say? Which page is it on? 373. Okay. So we are told in this sum, we are told that R150,000. What value is that? 150,000 deposited into the savings account. So it's your P value. Calculate the total amount accumulated. So what am I going to calculate here? Isn't this exactly the same thing? No. Calculate the accumulated amount. So I'm calculating A at the end of 16 years. So this is your N. If each of the following 2 cases. The first one is A. The interest is 8% per annum compounded annually. So what formula do I use here? A is equal to P into 1 plus I to the exponent n. Why don't I put that over any number? It's annually. What does annually mean? Yes. No? So since you're taking it every once a year, that's why it's over 1 and 1 times n doesn't change. So if I do the substitution, what do I substitute? It will be P, which is 150,000 into what? 1 plus 0,08 to the exponent 16. So that gives us 150,000 into 1 plus 0,08 to the exponent 16. So that gives a return of 51,300. No, that's 513,000. Yeah, 513,000. 891 and 40 cents. If it's rands, people, we know already, you round off to two decimal places. And otherwise, unless stated otherwise, to the nearest rand. Okay? Let's look at B. In question B, they say the interest is 8% per annum compounded monthly. So what's your formula there? A is equal to P into 1 plus I over 12. Why 12? This is monthly. What if you had said quarterly? Divided by 4. No? To the exponent, 12 in. You all agree with that? So what do I substitute in here now? P, which is 150,000, into 1 plus I, 0,08 over 12 to the exponent, 12 times 16. Work it out. That's over 12 to the exponent. Oh, I'm sure I've got one extra bracket. 12 times 16. So that gives us 537,000. $209, 1.5. Is there any confusion at this point? Any confusion? No? Let's look at C. C says, calculate the interest earned in each case. So in the first case, or in A, what can we say? What's the interest? How do we calculate interest? A minus P. So what's your A value in the first case? 513,891,40 minus what? 150,000. So what is that answer? It would be nice if somebody calculated. 363,891,40. Not so. And the second case? Again, same formula. Interest is equal to A minus P. Which is, so that's the first one. So it's 537,209,15 minus 150,000. Which gives us minus 150. 387,000. 209, comma 1. Will you guys understand? Any confusion? No. The last question says, what is the difference in interest earned? Okay, so the difference is the difference between these two values. Not so. So what's the difference? Oops. The difference is, of course, the larger amount, so it's going to be 387,209 rand, 15 minus 363,891,40. Okay, so that's going to be that answer, minus 363,891.40. Going to give you 23,317 rand and 75 cents. That's the difference. Just by compounding the same time period, the same amount over the same amount. The only difference is the compounding is taken more often. Okay, so the extra amount that your bag is calculated in D as 23,317 rand and 75 cents. Alright, any confusion there, people? No. Sorry about that cough earlier on. I think it's when I went outside. The wrong stuff happened. Okay. People, enjoy the rest of your day. Good morning, class.